Hello team, how are you? We're gonna give it a few minutes before we start, so give people time to join. So just stay tuned. We're gonna start shortly. Thank you. Hello. We're gonna give it a few minutes for people to join, so just hang in there. We're waiting just a couple minutes and we'll start. Thank you. Hi team, for those that have just joined, we are giving it 1 minute and we're gonna start promptly. So just hang in there. It's actually now it's like half a minute. So just give it some time for people to join and we'll start. Thank you. All right, let's kick this off. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Karen Hassim. I'm thrilled to have you join us today. And today we're going to be talking about how to elevate your workflows in the semiconductor industry with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP and Workload Factory. First of all, let's start off going over our agenda for today. We're going to be going over, first, we're going to introduce what Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is and how it accelerates the development cycles in the EDA industry or the semiconductor industry. We'll do an introduction of what NetApp Workload Factory is. And then we'll jump right into a demo to showcase what is the benefit of using Workload Factory with your FSx for NetApp ONTAP in development project. And after that, we're going to open it for questions. So if you have questions during this session, just send them over in the Q&A section, and we'll grab them and we'll answer them at the end. Also, just so you know, we are recording this session today, and you will receive a link so that you can look it over after if you want to kind of go over and try to emulate what you saw in the demo in your own environment, in your own development projects. That's great. So with that, I think one more thing is that we are going to be trying to keep some polls during the session so we can kind of tweak the information that we're sharing. So I think first of all, we will have a poll now. First, before we go to the poll, I want to introduce our speakers. I'm so sorry. First of all, we have here Ben Murphy. Hi, Ben. Want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm a FSXN sales specialist focusing on EDA and based out of Arizona, where it's currently raining.
Wow.
Odd for the desert.
Is it cold?
A little bit, probably
Okay.
like 60.
Okay. And joining us also, we have Ty Holmstrom. Hi, Ty.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm a product solutions architect at NetApp on the FSx for ONTAP and Workload Factory development team. And I focus specifically on our ISVs, our builders, our dev community, and in addition to that, game development, which kind of deals with a lot of similar workflows as you might be dealing with, just in a little different context. But glad to be here, excited for that. It is not cool. I'm in Houston and I am sweating and hot and muggy outside. So I wish it was cool and dry for me, but it's not. Good to see everybody.
Great. Great to have you both. And we also have some other folks from NetApp joining this call as well, who might maybe chip in during the conversation, which is fine. And the idea is for this to be as to provide you with as much information and insight as possible. So now I think, yes, we can move on to the poll. And as I said, we want to tweak the information that we're sharing. So first of all, we want to know, how often do you use FSx for ONTAP in your workload? So you can choose either regularly, like you use it several times a week, or occasionally, maybe a few times a week, or and then rarely, once a month, something like this, like really not that often, or you don't use it at all. So just let us know where you stand so that we can understand where we're at and how familiar you are with the product. So there we are. All right. Okay. So we have quite a bit of people in the audience that do not use F6 for ONTAP. So that's great. I think that opens up the conversation, Ben. Can you kick it off and tell us what Amazon FSx for ONTAP is?
Yeah. So first I'll start with a high level overview about FSx ONTAP. Then we'll discuss some differentiating features and finally apply them to business value in the development world. Next slide. So here's a nice lay of the land of all the offerings in AWS. FSx ONTAP is just one of the native storage services that AWS offers. It delivers NetApp ONTAP as a fully managed service. And what is a pretty substantial differentiator is it's a unified data management platform for file, block, and object, serving a wide range of workloads with enterprise scale and reliability. And the biggest thing here is you can choose a handful of these other services to support your enterprise, or you can consolidate and eliminate silos all into FSx ONTAP. So this is the same familiar ONTAP OS that has been perfected over the past 30 years and utilized by numerous Fortune companies with the most demanding requirements. So it can be high performance, low performance, capacity-based, very, very flexible service for our customers. Next slide. So now let's talk about some of the features and the data-rich services that FSx ONTAP provides. They can be grouped into 5 main pillars: accessibility, resilience, and protection, data security, and then the most important one that I always hear is price and performance. That's what a lot of our customers are asking for. And data mobility. So for accessibility, like I said, it provides file, block, and object on a single platform. It offers unique multi-protocol access supporting NFS, SMB, and iSCSI. For resilience and data protection, it's highly available by default, offers many data protection capabilities to ensure your data is protected both locally and offsite. Data security, this is a pretty important one that that I would say is a big differentiator for FSx ONTAP. It encompasses various capabilities related to data integrity, isolation, and data classification. One of the most important things about this is autonomous ransomware protection. And sure, it offers immutable snapshots, which NetApp has done for 30 years, also known as read-only. Now, immutable is a more trendy word, but we're going to take it one step further and give you indelible snapshots. And that means it's different from our competitors in that it doesn't matter if you know the CEO, there is no backdoor. You cannot call support and have these things deleted if a certain rule is in place. So that indelibility is one step further that ONTAP goes. Next is price and performance. So FSx ONTAP provides high throughput, high IOPS, and efficiencies to reduce data footprint. When we talk about efficiencies, what I'm referring to is deduplication, compression, and compaction. You get all those with these services. So sometimes they might be happening in the background, but the customer doesn't get to see them. You get the benefits. So if you're getting 4 to 1, you're going to see 4 to 1. You're going to pay a quarter of your data footprint. So that's how we deliver both high performance and cost efficiency in the cloud. Finally, data mobility. There are numerous capabilities for data movement and instant thin clones. This significantly improves development cycles. And as you can see, FSx ONTAP is a well-rounded approach to data management beyond just storage. So a lot of other considerations. Next slide. There are 4 main benefits in the semiconductor development or in semiconductor development by bursting or moving EDA workloads into the AWS cloud. So the first one is we're going to eliminate developer wait time with infinite compute on demand and fast data access. We're going to reduce non-recoverable engineering costs by increasing the developer's productivity and efficient utilization of tool licenses. One of the most expensive parts of developing a chip is the cost of the engineers that are employed to do the work. So if we can reduce that wait time, make them more productive, we are effectively lowering the cost of chip development. Next is we accelerate chip design projects by reducing complexity and enabling faster development operations. We're also going to collaborate globally by making the project data available in a consistent manner across design centers. That could be Europe and US, it could be Asia Pac, Europe and US design centers, which is very common in the semiconductor industry. Now Ty will give us a deeper look into a typical development pipeline.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. It's a great overview. I want to level set our thinking real quick, and I'm not going to go through anything that's groundbreaking or earth-shattering for you. You're probably very familiar with this process. However, I think it's really important for us to kind of align on this process because I'm going to build off of it and talk about the challenges and benefits as we go through this process. So to start, I'm going to hit the developers on the left there. You see them, they're doing their work. Wherever they are located, they're making changes to source code or assets for the project. And essentially, they're checking changes into version control, usually something like Perforce Helix Core. You may be familiar with that. Sorry, it's not Helix Core. It's actually P4 now. But regardless of what your repo is for version control, they'll go there once they're ready to be viewed. Now, when changes are submitted to version control, this usually triggers the CI/CD system to do some work. And maybe a build needs to occur, tests need to be run off of that build. But the CI/CD system's just kind of the boss or a conductor, so it's delegating jobs to agents. Now, in a more automated scenario, and I see this pop up in different types of development, whether it's digital or software or game or something else. You may be familiar with it as well if you're automating, but sometimes these jobs usually end up in ephemeral containers. They may be manual jobs that get run. Maybe you have to do it manually yourself on your local machine. But in either case, somebody or something is acting as an agent to run a build. And then once they run that build, they actually will execute before they disappear if it's automated. In semiconductor, again, it might be a little bit different. But in either case, that build executes. And then those build jobs have some sort of output. And I and many others typically call that an artifact of some sort. Could be an executable, some other large file. Those get submitted to some type of storage once they're built. And then finally, those built artifacts need to be tested for quality assurance, and testers will pull down that artifact. They'll test it, raise issues and bugs, and then the cycle repeats itself over and over again. It's an iterative process. So nothing new, again, nothing earth-shattering, but I think it's critical that we kind of keep our minds set on this particular process at the moment. And that being said, there are challenges that are associated with this process in general, but they really show up when you're actually trying to do this in the cloud. And in many cases, these projects can be really, really large. And that's going to account for a challenge that we'll dive into here in just a second. And because they're large, these operations in this process and the costs can drastically go up. So these are big challenges we're trying to address, and hopefully you'll agree once we get through them. So let's go back to our process. And on our left again, we have
I'm
the
sorry,
developer.
I'm interrupting you. We're not seeing you.
You're not seeing my screen?
No, your face. Turn on the camera.
Oh, that was kind of intentional, but that's okay.
Oh, we wanted to see you.
Okay, well, here you go. All right, so you got your developers on the left, and we're starting with a version 5.384, and they're operating on that particular version. And that version is sitting in the version control system, and it has a bunch of data associated with the code that they're working on. And in step one, they make some changes or they do a reversion. Looks like we're going down to 5.213 so that they can go work on something in particular. In many cases, the way I see this manifest is they do a copy of the code and data. And then once they step into the CI/CD system or some other manual process, there are other copies that get built and distributed for both CI/CD system and or agents that need to run on that particular data. And then from there, the testers may get multiple copies of those copies of data so that they can do their testing. And I see this all the time when I see this process in the cloud. It's happening often. Now, the problem with this is you're creating multiple sets of data. And if you're working with large data, or at least a large set of data, this is compounded. Your capacity is being multiplied in many cases. And because it's being multiplied and you're operating with large data, it takes a long time to create these copies. And so this process slows down quite drastically in the cloud. Now, if you consider the iterative context of this process, and we add in iteration to this, what we're actually doing is exponentially increasing the amount of time it takes to complete these job runs, in addition to the capacity being multiplied. So your cost ultimately is going up quite drastically. What we're actually talking about with FSx for ONTAP, and you've heard some of the other features that Ben had mentioned, one I'm particularly focusing on is our ability to actually generate thin clones. And I'm being very specific when I say thin clones. There is cloning capabilities for other services for sure, but in many cases, they're still generating full copies of the data. In our case, there's a feature called flex clones. And what we can actually do is build a clone off of a snapshot, which sets the version that we're looking for. And when we build that clone is built as a thin clone, which means it's taking up nearly no space when it gets created. And because it's not taking up any space, it can take minutes, and in many cases, what I deal with is seconds, to actually generate that clone. And so what you're actually doing with flex clones is you're speeding up the process and you're reducing cost all at the same time. And I've actually seen in some of my customers, the accelerant to the process is great, for sure. But in many cases, some of the cloning and copying might exist already. So they're kind of like, that's cool. Yeah, we accelerate the process, but the fact that we can actually reduce our cost of the process just makes it even better. And they're saving a lot of money to actually do that.
Ty,
Now, yes,
if I'm a developer, do I have to know NetApp in order to make these clones?
you do not need,
Or
no, you do not
okay,
need to do NetApp. It's helpful always. I'd be stupid to say it's not. That being said, we're going to get into something called Workload Factory here in a few slides. That'll actually show you that you don't necessarily need to know NetApp. You don't need to know our CLI. You don't need to know even the API calls necessarily to do this. We have a graphical
okay.
interface to do this in simply. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. It's a great question, though. Just a couple quick notes on our clones. So again, flex clones are thin clones. They're lightweight. It's point in time because it's based on a snapshot. So you create a snapshot, then you create a clone off of that snapshot. They're fully functional and zero capacity. And what I mean by fully functional is you can actually write back into the clone, which is really cool. I'm not really talking a whole lot about that here, but the clone is not just a read only, it's a read write clone. Now, the writes going back into the clone might be a delta change, but it's only the delta change and not, again, a full copy. So again, it's based on snapshot. As changes are made to the clone's data, that volume can consume storage. That's your writing back into the clone itself. So it allows it to operate and act like an actual volume, which is really cool. Those changes go back to the parent. Now, what this really does for you is, again, they're instantaneously created. Nobody sees the impact. And in fact, you can create multiple clones off the same snapshot for multiple devs to actually test on, which is really sweet. Again, works just like a volume. And it's super, super, super cost efficient, especially in light of the cloud, without question. There's huge benefits there.
So Ty, this means that it will be super easy and fast to spin up new testing environments, for example,
100%.
using
Yeah,
technology.
much faster than pretty much any service that exists right now that we've seen.
Yeah.
We're the only ones that can really do this right now. So definitely and highly encourage you to check this out. But again, this ultimately results in speeding up the development cycle. I have actually, most of my customers are hitting around 70% savings, especially when we're talking about their actual build farm. Whether it's manual or automated, doesn't matter. In the build farm, we can reduce those costs of that particular build farm by up to around 70%, which is really, really, really huge. And we're actually enhancing our productivity with our developers. This is really helping because of the speed increase, the accelerant, and also the reduced cost as well. This allows us to actually build up our ability to collaborate globally with our developers. And one thing that I'm really not talking about here yet in these slides is the fact that the faster you can iterate and the more collaborative our developers can get, the better your quality increases too. So you're increasing your time to market, but you're also increasing your quality to market as well, because you can actually dev test and QA your changes in code really, really fast. It's a really cool side effect of this. Now, Ben had introduced and planted the seed of the idea of Workload Factory. A lot of you may be sitting back thinking, this is great. What does this mean? How do I deploy this? How do I manage it? And on top of that, developers have access to clones, or at least you can allow them to have access to clones. And that might be scary to think about at first, rightly so. Devs like creating clones and can get pretty messy with it. Workload Factory is here to help you with that. It basically bakes in all the automation needed to do this. So you're not having to write your own scripts to do it. It includes all the integration around CI/CD as well for toolkits like Jenkins or any other CI/CD platforms you might use. Our APIs are open, it's REST API and available to CI/CD. We have different types of administration and bells and whistles around knobs that you can turn to help you control your users. So if we have time, I might get into the console and show you what that practically looks like, but you can set guardrails and things like that so that devs don't overtake your storage management system, the file system that is FSX for ONTAP. And we have different types of ability to control and audit things as well. Now, I have somebody on the line with us. His name's Paul Manti. You may or may not know him yet, but he is one of our specialists for EDA. He comes with a ton of knowledge, and I wanted to give him a quick opportunity to talk about how he's seen this out in the wild, and specifically based on his experience in EDA. Paul, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, hey Ty, I very much appreciate the opportunity to chip in. I think what you're talking about here, between the combination of workload factory and then core NetApp capabilities like our instant cloning, is really putting this powerful feature into the hands of development engineers who, as we've said earlier, do not have any understanding of storage whatsoever until storage does something to bite them, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very friendly way of giving them this kind of capability without really losing control from an IT perspective. And I used to be a former engineer. Um, I did chip and board level design work for Hewlett Packard back before I moved into the field. And that ability to hand an engineer the ability to create clones or snapshots that are meaningful to them cannot be understated, right? Um, the ability to instantly recover work or to checkpoint something that's really important, go try something new, and then come back to it just cannot be understated as a value. And I'll also underscore that we've got a number of customers that have done this work today, right? And they see substantial savings in terms of the amount of time it takes. And I'll give one instance here of an application of cloning, where the checkout and build process, and you kind of showed it there. You know, I'm a development engineer. Sit down at the beginning of the day, the regression suite ran all last night. I get a bug report for one of my modules in a specific version that got checked in. You know, my first chore would be to go replicate that and do a checkout and build locally so that I can replicate the bug locally. Well, the power of NetApp here is really substantial because that process, depending upon where I'm at in the flow, if I'm at the IP or block level, it may take tens of minutes, and it consumes a valuable, time of either a VCS or an Excellium or other, verification suite license. And then I go through that build, and I have to validate that I'm really building the same environment that was as built in the build farm. And at the SoC and chip level, that could be hours to do that checkout and build process. And with flex clones, we're talking about a couple of minutes to make the same thing happen. And so, whereas I might lose context or have to go, work on something else in the meantime while I'm thinking about this bug, this really enables me to, at most, go get a cup of coffee and come back and be ready to hit this bug as soon as the clone is done. And like I've said, we've seen companies that have rebuilt their flows around this because they see such a dramatic improvement in their design capabilities and especially their ability to achieve their market goals in terms of getting product out as fast as possible, which is my final note, right? This is of key importance to semiconductor developers because historically, roughly 30% of projects hit success on first tape out, and that's now dropped down to 14%. So as you pointed out, that ability to iterate faster and to get to a design closure on the front end or to a high yield design on the back end is crucially important. And I think NetApp as a storage and data management provider really enables this in terms of those meaningful snapshots and flex clones that help developers improve that time to market. And I'll just one last statement because I love this story. I've been told again and again and again by customers that, we've spent a year trying to explain to them how powerful this can be if it's put into the hands of their developers. And then about 30 minutes in, the developers are like, how come you didn't show me this before?
Yeah.
So this is crucially important. And they'll think of all sorts of creative ways and now start treating IT as their partner towards really improving their overall processes.
I think that's such a critical statement right there. IT as a partner. I mean, in my past, I led development, I led IT, and it was always frustrating. It's kind of like we were the team that they needed but didn't want to have, basically, because we always, told them, no, you can't do XYZ things. But the fact that you can release these capabilities to your developers and feel free to do so because we have some control and guardrails over it is critical. And make no mistake, we love our product, um, but out of the box, it's very customizable. And I've seen customers overrun our file systems in the past because they didn't have control. That's where Workload Factory steps in to help manage that, and it does it really well. And we're going to look at that. So to do that, if I could advance here, I want to present to you a situation. You may or may not find yourself in this situation. And yes, these are stock images. I don't know. I don't know why they're so different. Mark's like, the collar wearing guy, and John's, he looks like he plays for some metal band or emo band from the early 2000s. One cooler, one not, right? I see more Marks than I do John's, to be honest with you. But that being said, we're going to have a slow dev, fast dev situation. And I didn't come on camera because these guys look cooler than I did, but you made my ugly mug jump on camera, so thanks. Kidding. We got two developers. They're at Nexus Mobile. We've got a feature request that's coming in. Both of these guys work on the same product team. And so they're working on the same feature request simultaneously. One's going to operate on the same code set differently than the other. John's going to take, he's more familiar with DevOps. He's more familiar with automation. So he's comfortable running with some new stuff. Mark's more familiar with, the typical way he does things day to day, which is great too. So he's going to take his more linear way that is tried and true, but not using some of the latest and greatest automation capabilities that we have to offer. So I'm going to actually run a demo that shows these two side by side. Now, before we do that, just so I can prep my demo, we're going to give you a quick poll.
Yeah, let's open up for that poll. And just want to reiterate here regarding Workload Factory that it is a free tool. So you just have to register and use it. So first, we're asking what's your biggest challenge with EDA workflows today? So let us know. Is it the environment setup? Is it the bottlenecks? Do you have costs that are hindering or any other thing, like something that's not listed here? Let us know. We'll give it like a few seconds for people to answer, and then we'll share those results and give you some time to set up that demo. There we go. All right, so a lot of costs and some environmental setup delays and others. So yeah, thank you for participating. Go Ty.
Excellent. Thank you all. Do you see my demo on the screen? Just want to make sure we're looking at the right thing here.
Yes, we are seeing.
Great. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So keep those two faces, those beautiful faces, Mark and John, in your mind. I'm actually going to run you through a quick video demo, and the reason is because otherwise we'll be sitting here for about 2 hours, and I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to do that. So I'm just going to do a quick demo video. If I have time, I'll jump into the console just to give you a quick view in real time what the actual console kind of looks like, because I'd like to show you the guardrails that exist too on that. But what we're going to actually do is start in Workload Factory, and we're going to look at our FSX for ONTAP file system. And in order to do that, first we're actually going to go to Storage, and we're going to take a look at our file systems, because this is a solution of Workload Factory on FSX for ONTAP. And in order to take a look at our volumes that we have established, I'm going to click the Volumes tab. And this will list out all the volumes in Workload Factory for a particular file system that you're wanting to look at. And in our case, I've got our fast dev and our slow dev. So you got John versus Mark right there. Now, what we're actually going to do next is we want to start as the slow dev, all right? And let's get this demo kicked off again. Now, to start, we got to mount the volume first. So we're mounting the volume on a Linux machine. We're creating a separate branch by copying the code base locally so we can make changes to it. And you see the NFS mount command there at the top. And I'm going to execute the rsync command to sync the code for the slow developer. And it's going to take a while. So in the meantime, we're going to work as the fast developer. All right. As you can see on the left, we're going back to Workload Factory. And then we'll open up a new terminal. And as we open up this new terminal, we're going to mount the fastdev NFS directory and go back to Workload Factory. Now at this point, I'm going to pause it here because I want to explain what you're looking at. In Workload Factory, there's a context called the builders context. And that builders context is our current and future state for any tooling and additional services in the software as a service platform that Workload Factory is, where we will include tools for helping developers operate and build essentially in AWS. To start, this was we had a lot of requests on helping automate the use of Flex clones. So you go to that actual context, you come and create a project, and a project is really just I'd call it a container or a list of capabilities that you can offer your developers in a current project. So this is where we're going to be able to apply different types of policies. And you can see on the screen here, operation policies, access policies. In my demo, these don't get expanded, but that's where you can set your guardrails. So if we have time, we'll go there. So in the meantime, I'm going to let this video play, and we're going to create the project there and give it a name. We're going to give it a description, the file system target that we're actually wanting to build off of, which is going to allow us to see the volumes that we're building off of. Remember, this is fastdev, this is John. So we want to give him the capability to take a version of the volume and create some clones. Now, what we're going to do next is create a snapshot, and this is going to set a basic version level of the code base that we want. And we're going to give that snapshot a name. Usually it's an identifier that you want to be familiar with. Date time's always good. Project name's always good. However you do in your environment probably applies here. But we're going to create the snapshot, which is that point in time copy. This allows you to operate off of that point in time version and then allows the actual production volume to continue changing as it needs to. And then you can take new snapshots wherever you see fit. And on the back end, what you're not seeing is this is actually working off of integrations with Perforce P4 right now. If you don't use P4, all good. Our team would love to chat with you to figure out what else we could actually integrate with that would be more beneficial for you. All right, so we're going to create a snapshot name, and we now have a new code version. So now what we want to end up doing is create a clone on the snapshot we took earlier and see it has the original code base. And in order to get to this kind of next iteration, what I'm emulating here is code change. So I'm emulating the different types of changes John's actually making on that particular code base. So now we got a new code version, and we're now going to create a clone based on the snapshot we took earlier and see it has the original code base, which can be used for another developer that's actually working concurrently and now optimally. Maybe John's like, hey, Mark, you're still waiting, bro. Come use this clone. And Mark's going to be like, how'd you get done so quick? You know, that's because you weren't syncing all the data down and waiting on it. We just created a snapshot and a clone, both thin, both instantaneous. So we mounted the clone. We checked that we had the original code base and no version folder. And if you look at this particular screen here, well, I lost my cursor to pause. Where are we at? Here we go. Let me go back here. So what you can actually do in Workload Factory as well is you could get into the actual CLI of the file system. Now, before that, we've already created all sorts of different types of automation that's connecting to the CLI of ONTAP. And that allows us to do a bunch of advanced things. Workload Factory automates all of that. Otherwise, what you'd actually do is go into an EC2 instance in AWS. Then you would open up an SSH terminal, and then you'd terminal over to the file system CLI, log in, and do your work there for many advanced things. I'm saying that intentionally because the AWS console, while it's super useful and great for deployment, or at least initial deployments, there's a lot of advanced functionality that the console doesn't do. And everything you're seeing on your screen right now with Workload Factory, that's an example of that. These are things you cannot do in the console, which is why Workload Factory exists. It's meant to basically provide all these additional advanced things, make them super easy for you to use and leverage. This particular thing that you're looking at, Cloud Shell, is one of those features. Instead of having to go through the EC2 instance and SSH and all that, the Cloud Shell is immediately connected to the file system, and you can run CLI straight from the Cloud Shell. That's what we're doing here. So we're taking a look at the file system and doing a vol show within the file system so that we can see the volumes. And if you notice, we got the project name, Clone 1, Android 16, October 21, 12, 07, Clone 1. That's roughly volume size of 400 gigabytes, but what's mounted and what you see there is 4.72 gigabytes. That is drastically smaller than a full volume that it otherwise would be. So we've really saved a ton of money there. Instead of creating a full 400 gigabyte volume duplicate, we've actually created a 4.72 gig usable volume that's just thin and much smaller. So it's saving a ton of money in its existence, but it was, as you could see, much faster to actually sync, pull down, mount, and get to work. Now, the cool thing about all this is, again, this clone is usable. If you look at what Mark is doing on the right here, he's still literally waiting for all of this copying to happen. And by the end, it took him about 108 minutes to do this full copy to mount and get his work done. Whereas John, it was literally nearly as quick as you saw, minus him doing all of his code emulation. That was pretty quick. Normally that wouldn't go that fast, but John was able to complete much faster, and he now has a clone off of what he did. He could just go hand that off to whoever's the next developer, and it again is not a full copy. So you see exponential decrease in time and decrease in cost by using Workload Factory in the process that John was actually working through there. So that is the demo.
So Ty, John was done with his changes and development before Mark even got synced.
That's right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, Mark's still over there waiting. John had a couple of cups of coffee already and is probably on to his second or third project.
Nice. I love a good drag race. Thanks.
Yeah. Also, what I'm not really speaking to is this is the manual, more of a manual process. So this particular automation Workload Factory, it literally was built, and that was a part of the project development for that, with EDA in mind. So it's meant to really do the exact same process you're familiar with on-prem in the cloud, but with all the additional automation that's going to help make it a little bit easier, and the guardrails to help control performance and quota and all that other good stuff for the developers. The cool thing is, what you couldn't see is we actually make all that code available to you through something called Codebox. And it actually can give you the code so that you can do integrations with it to actually create an automated process for the build farm or for whatever other types of dev processes you see fit. All that automation's there for you to use. So you can actually start transforming the more manual process into a more automated process that we see in like game development, for instance, or automotive. They work with massive digital files. And this process is insanely expensive and time consuming. And they've used Workload Factory and FSx for ONTAP as a solution to accelerate and reduce the cost there. So we have tons of customers already doing it. yeah, they're not EDA per se, but they've kind of stepped forward into the more automated world in doing this, which is really rad to see. So with that, we got a quick poll, I think, right? Or
Yeah, one
we're,
last poll.
oh, I'm sorry, we're done with the polls. We're
I
off to
think we're
some,
done. Yeah, we did two already.
yeah.
Yeah, but let me just kind of wrap up and summarize what we've seen today. Just to kind of recap the key messages that we've been sharing with you. First of all, that FSx for ONTAP is an AWS fully managed storage service that is powered on NetApp's technology. So just make sure it is an AWS storage service, first party. It's not a marketplace offering. It provides enterprise grade storage features that we saw. It provides storage efficiencies, compression, deduplication, compaction, data protection. We have features like autonomous ransomware protection that we didn't cover, but like it's a really enterprise grade storage. And today we focus on one of its capabilities, which is the cloning, the flex clone, the thin clone, and how this technology allows you to create those instant and space efficient copies that are writable and that you can use for development and testing. This can positively impact your projects and can accelerate chip design cycles. We also looked at Workload Factory, and I want to reiterate, it's a free tool that comes to help you simplify and automate the use of FlexClone. And it's for those people that are using FSx for ONTAP. It provides that user-friendly interface that just simplifies the creation with just a few clicks, and you can spin up those testing environments. You can have development, you can do A/B testing, whatever you need. It's easy it's a lot simpler and faster with FSx for ONTAP. And I think with that, I think we've covered it, right? I think we can open up for questions. So let's see. Wow. Okay, so there's a question here. Do we have Workload Factory available for on-prem NetApp as well?
Ooh, great question. Okay, let's do this. That was a good segue. Whoever said that question, that made it easy for me. I want to show you something on the screen here. Let's just get right into a Workload Factory demo real fast.
This is not a recording.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. So I would answer that question with yes and no. It really kind of depends on what you're wanting to do. And the reason why I say that is because if you're talking about the builder's context, what we're looking for is a P4 server on the back end and FSx for ONTAP on the front end. So by itself, it's not connected on-prem. However, if you go to Workload Factory, and let's take a look at, I think I might have a demo system here that has a link connected. So let's make sure. This one does not. Let's go back one. I think my demo one does. Yeah, I got a link connected here. So what a link is a Lambda function that is essentially given credentials and security capability to connect to the file system, but also connect to on-prem systems. And what I actually have here in my particular demo, I actually just did this for a customer about a week ago, so I haven't removed this target, but I've got an actual snap mirror that's connected from an on-prem system to my FSx for ONTAP system in the cloud, TH demo 01. And if I click on premise over here on the left, it looks like my demo cluster's been removed. But you would see and discover your demo clusters here, and they would show up here. And then what you would do is create a replication relationship, which I could just do here say replicate volume data, and then you'd go through the graphical interface or the automation that's presented to you on the right here, however you see fit, to generate that replication code and commit and execute the code so that a SnapMirror is automatically built between on-prem and FSxN systems. So if you could kind of take that concept, apply it to maybe P4 code and how you do replications with P4 or some other system. Maybe you replicate via SnapMirror, maybe you replicate via P4. In either case, that replication exists from on-prem to FSxN, and then you can go through the builder's process to build those clones and give them to your devs. But long-winded answer of yes, we can connect and integrate with on-prem systems, just not natively in the builder's context, which shows up here.
Okay, and I think there's another question. It's kind of related to what you were saying about SnapMirror. What is the best way to copy the large data between on-prem NetApp and FSx for ONTAP? Which tool do you suggest?
If you've got on-prem NetApp, SnapMirror is going to be 100% your best option. SnapMirror is super efficient when it comes to the cloud. And the reason why it is because it's at a block level replication. It's not a file level replication. And because of that, it's very efficient over higher latency type connections. But the more bandwidth you give it, the faster it's going to be. Cool thing about SnapMirror is you can kind of throttle it if you need to as well. Otherwise, it's going to take up the whole pipe. So it could be really fast if you want it to be. You can control it as well. It's going to beat out pretty much any other solution out there if you have NetApp or ONTAP to ONTAP, like on-prem ONTAP to FSx for ONTAP. For a lot of our developers that have P4, it gets a little more gray there because P4 can be pretty good at replicating its HX depots volume. And the reason why it's good at that is because it actually has metadata and logs to track where everything's going. So sometimes that can be a little more effective, but it's not going to be more efficient necessarily because it's not replicating at the block level. So I've had some customers use SnapMirror to replicate that data. I've had some customers use Perforce to replicate that data. Just depends on your knowledge of Perforce P4 and how you really want to do it. But SnapMirror is also really good at setting up DR sites and replicating from FSx for ONTAP to another FSx for ONTAP in a different region or even an on-prem system. So you can go back up, you can go back down, and things like Flex Clones, Flex Cache, that's all built on top of essentially our snapshots and SnapMirror. So all of it leverages the same stuff just to do slightly different things depending on what your workload is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Okay, I have a question here. Given the need to secure B2B data sharing with the supply chain in semiconductor industry, how can FlexClone facilitate a rapid, secure, let's say, sharing of data copies with external partners? Is that possible?
It is possible. You know, a lot of that's going to get down to networking and how you architect all of your security apparatus around your AWS account, what you choose to open up through the security groups to the partners, types of peering that you have between the different networks and VPCs. You have transit gateway up, all that stuff needs to be considered. But the short, quick answer is we've actually seen Flex Cache used a lot to do distribution. It can be really effective at that. And I've actually seen, we just recently had a customer in Japan. It was a game customer, but it's essentially what they're doing is they're flex caching a P4HX depots volume to an edge server that one of their partners has access to do additional QA and testing on. And flex cache was used in that scenario, which is in essence kind of a distribution. Builds, like if you have post-build artifacts, I've seen customers put those post-build artifacts back into their version control systems. You can do that. We have a number of customers in EDA doing that.
Yeah.
But
Tyler,
I've also, one quick thing, I've also seen those builds get posted into FSxN so that it could be flex cached out to partners and other teams to be either distributed to market or to be iterated on and tested. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to add a couple of specific examples that we've seen. And the nice thing about Flex Cache, as you're mentioning here, is that you're really controlling the copy that gets, goes B2B. Because I think there's several use cases. The most immediate I can think of is, at a tape out in a design, the back and forth with TSMC or whoever the fab provider is. You want to be able to give them access to the design. Then you want to control who can get that. And so, Flex Cache has that good ability that they're getting a cache copy, and you can delete that and shut that down and control it whenever you want to. Same thing if you're sharing, you're trying to debug something with your EDA provider for a front end flow, and they need to be able to see the specific examples. It's a very controllable way of you really haven't moved your data from to their location. You're really just showing them a cache copy, and then you can shut it down. So yeah, I think just adding some color to what you're saying, I think is exactly right. It gives you the control, the security control, and the ability to control who gets what.
Yep, 100%. And it could be used with other services if you prefer to leverage other services like maybe CloudFront or something else to control that even further. It can be stacked, but FlexCache is really efficient because maybe your source is a full data set. Let's say it's 400 gigabytes, and you've got somebody else across the pond, across the world, needing to access that 400 gigabytes, but they only actually need like 5 from that volume. FlexCache will cache only what they touch, and so it'll put that at their destination as opposed to the full volume. So that makes the replication of the data cheaper, more efficient, a little bit faster to get to them. And then how you choose to have that partner access the data is really up to you at that point. You could open up their ability to mount that volume directly, or you could front it with something that can read it and then just present what they need presented to them. In either case, FlexCache is a great use case for that.
Okay, I have one last question. We have time for just one. Will creating a Flex clone impact the performance of the parent volume or the overall storage system?
Nobody sees the clone get created, doesn't impact. There's some tiny little metadata operations that happen on the back end. ONTAP is an OS for a file system. However, it's literally nobody sees anything happening. And typically when you size a file system, you're allowing what we call headroom to be always available for those operations so that nobody sees impact. So when you work with us, we'll guide you through sizing and ensuring that we meet the performance requirements. But regardless, FlexClones has no impact on users and their ability to operate or work.
All right. So I think with this, I think it's a wrap. I want to thank you, Ty and Ben and Paul and everybody that worked on this to make this happen. And of course, to our audience for giving us an hour of their time to listen to what we have to say. Just asking our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the recording. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So there will be a feedback form that will pop up. Please fill it out. Let us know what you think of this, of the content. What would you like to hear in future iterations of this? So thank you very much, and hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.